just thank you for another chance to come together and commune with each other, God. Because you created community and you created us to come together and learn and be of service to your people, oh God. So we thank you for this moment. We thank you for those that put it together. God, we thank you for the directors of this program, oh God. And we just thank you for the minds of Tracy, amen, and Gabrielle wanting to come together and merge with others in the community, God, to bring more resilience, bring more, community, bring more reports and things that can help our community grow and be better. So, God, we thank you for the group of women that is here on tonight, oh God, and whatever they're needing and seeking in the areas in their life, God, we ask that you continue to bless them and anoint them, oh God, and continue to uplift them, God, in everything that they do and everything that they touch, oh God. In the name of Jesus, oh God, we bless the speaker on today, oh God, that whatever she's teaching us, that we soak it in and then fall on good ground, oh God, that we able to go out and sow more seeds, oh God, when she plant them in us on tonight. And we just thank you, oh God, because for being so amazing and just allowing us this time to be here to learn and to fellowship and meet new people, oh God. So we thank you and we give you the praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
My turn. Thank you. Yeah, so I have a 3-year-old business partner, and she is going to help me out tonight. First of all, thank you to Purpose Church. Both pastors, I just honor y'all, honor the work that you're doing in the city. Thank you so much for being open to just not just church on Sunday, but like things that really do help outside of Sunday. So I'm really grateful for that. Shameless plug because my auntie is in the building and we give honor where honor is due. She does have a book out called Beyond the Tears, Getting Over When It's Not Over, that is available for purchase today. I have one of my favorites in here. It's called This Girl is Evolving, because yes, ma'am. So yeah, check her out. My style is very like open, and I don't want to just talk at you. I really want this to be as interactive as possible. This is like a neurological, biological model, but it's something that's applicable to our lives, and it's something that I was trained in a year ago, and it has completely just revolutionized my life, revolutionized the way I parent, and just revolutionized the way that I feel more comfortable in my body, even when things are not 100% great. Because, okay, we still like year 2 of the pandemic. So, the community. Uh-oh. I think we okay. I'm sorry. All right, it's like okay. Now we ready. Okay, so the community resilience model is from the Trauma Resource Institute. And this presentation was created by the executive director of the Trauma Resource Institute, Elaine Miller Karras, and I was actually able to get trained from her. They're based out of California. So, can we go to the next slide? While we're doing that, I do have a few resiliency-based questions, and think about this. What or who is helping you get through the most right now? What or who is giving you strength? And what or who has helped you get through hard times in the past? So I'll say it again, I'll start with the last one. What or who has helped you get through hard times in the past? What or who is giving you strength? And what or who is helping you the most right now? And I'll start. Obviously, like my faith gives me strength. My family, my daughter, even something as simple as just like a burrito bowl from Chipotle, that gives me strength days because I'm just like, there's nothing I can do but just eat a bowl of Chipotle. It's that simple. Does anybody else want to share? And this will all make sense this all aids into this whole model, thinking about what really gives you strength and what's really grounding you in this moment. No pressure. Oh, you gonna say something? What you gonna say? I give you strength. Thank you, baby. Aww. My mom is getting strength. So sweet. Anybody else want to share?
I would say for me, you said they give you strength right now.
Yeah.
Right now, what's been giving me a lot of strength outside of family, and the basic things that we say, is my passion for doing hair. That's my thing. That element for me is non-judgmental for me. I'm there. I'm in a space where I can lay a bed there and lay there in that space because that's been giving me strength. That people sit in my chair. It hasn't been crazy. It's been loving and prayerful. It's just been, for me, it's been everything. And I'm like, I can't wait to get up tomorrow morning to do it.
Oh, that's so good.
So that's been my strength for me lately to get through a lot of things that's been transpiring in ministry, in my home, with the children, a lot of things, community. Like, I need a space where I can be me, let my hair down, nobody judges me, and nobody think of me a pastor's wife, none of that. I just need to be 38-year-old me for a minute. And so that's been it for me there, doing hair and loving on others, and that's just been my strength.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah.
That's big. Anybody else?
So I'm an author, and I think most of my strength comes from writing, and in fact, majority of it does. And it's almost as if when I'm there in that moment, whether it's a thought, whether it's a sentence or something, I see something, I'm writing, I'm constantly journaling.
Resiliency is an individual's and community's ability to identify and use individual and collective strengths in living fully with compassion in the present moment and to thrive while managing the activities of daily living. I emphasize thrive because who else feels like sometimes I ain't thriving? I'm making it through this week, I'm making it through this day. Um, I know I can attest to that. So that's why I love this model so much because it's really focusing on not just surviving, but what does it look like to thrive daily. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So, what this model also helps us do is a perspective shift. A lot of times we have a conventional way of thinking that people are bad, people need to be punished, people don't care, we need to stop making excuses for people. What is wrong with you? Like we say that. So this allows us to move from a more conventional way of thinking to a trauma-informed perspective. So trauma-informed says people are suffering, people aren't bad, people need effective intervention. They don't need to be punished. Many people care but lack understanding and skills. We need to know how trauma impacts a child's and adult's development. And instead of what's wrong with you, what happened to you? Those are better questions, right? And so even to go deeper, because it's good to know what happened to you, and but we want to help go from conventional to trauma to now resiliency informed. Now that you know what happened to you, the next question is, okay, I might have been suffering, but I'm also resilient. Something might have happened to me, but I can learn compassionate skills. I can learn how to regulate, and not just what happened to you, but what is right with you, and what is your strength. I'm gonna say that again. What's right with you, and what is your strength? Does that settle better than what's wrong with you or something wrong with you? Like sometimes, we even say that to our kids sometimes. What's wrong with you? What are you doing? Instead, like,
No, seriously, but I think my thing is, I always try to ask a person what's right versus what's wrong first. And that's kind of always been my thing because over the years I've learned that when you ask a person what's wrong with them, they automatically go into their emotions. They automatically go into these feelings. And so oftentimes we don't even recognize or we don't even identify that what we're doing is that we're tugging at those emotions, causing, I wouldn't necessarily say an upward, but causing them to go into that place where obviously they don't want to be,
right.
and next thing you know, they're crying and they're sobbing and they're trying to get things out and it just doesn't come out. Well, because I triggered something, and so over the last few years, the main thing that I've always tried to focus on, and I guess that's why a lot of individuals doesn't mind talking to me, because I've learned to just ask, well, let's talk about what's right first. Well, let me ask you what's right first. And so, oh, this is going well, this is going well, this is going well. And then by the time they end the conversation, we're not even thinking about what's wrong. They're not even worried about what's wrong. And we don't even get off into that conversation about what's wrong. And so I think just as humans, as people, we just need to develop the habit of asking a person what's right first before we ask what's wrong. Even if we do come across a status or something on Facebook and, a person is pouring their feelings out and their emotions, well, I don't want to trigger that. I can see that they're going through something already. I don't want to trigger it more. So let me ask them what's right. What's right first. Yeah.
That is good. And it really, what you're speaking about is building resilience, because we can look at our current world and say, not only are we in a pandemic, there's an active war, there's violence in our communities, there's X, Y, and Z, there's things in our homes, things in our lives, things in our marriages, whatever, right? Um, and that can just eat away at your resilience. It can eat away at the thriving that we want to do in our daily life, but it sounds like so cliche, but when you can focus on, and that's even biblical, right? When you can focus on the good things and what's right and what's true, that really does make a difference. And what's possible, right? Like what can we create, right? I think that's I love that. Um, can we go to the next slide, please? So the community resilience model, we can skip past this because we kind of went over resiliency and form. But just to reiterate, it's asking, what's right with you. And this does break down a set of 6 wellness skills. And the great thing about the CRIM model, it can be used across the lifespan, across cultures, and across different literacy abilities, which is really important. Access is so important. Next slide. We all have access to the language of our biology and a framework to understand the human experience. We all have access to that. That's one thing that it don't matter how much money you have, how much education you have, we all have access to that. We just have to learn how to access it. Next slide. So the community resilience model can help create safer spaces for dialogue like the one we're in today, regarding our differences, honoring our lived experiences, and remembering what binds us together as a world community. The core values are service, social justice, dignity, respect, and my favorite, worth of every person, family, and community. That's really important to me. Next slide. And this just kind of shows where CRIM has actually been effective. It's a global movement at this point. So let's move, we can go to the next slide on creating a common language. So, and we can go to the next slide after this. So the resilience zone. Our goal with the CRIM model is to widen our resilience zone. And I'm gonna put this down for a minute. Just elevate my voice. So go like this. This right here, it represents our resilience zone, right? So you could be bumped up or you could be bumped down, right? If you in this middle part, we call this the okay zone. Like even if something is kind of like, let's just say you left your umbrella and you just got your hair done, and then
big time now.
Don't slap me.
All of a sudden, the posture changes.
Okay, online, can y'all hear me? Now I'm about to be into it for real. Can y'all hear me online?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why this slide is not showing up for this particular graphic. It should say something like stuck in the high zone. Yes, there we go. So again, just reiterating, and you can just keep kind of picking it until all those graphics come up. Stuck in the high zone, we're talking about feeling, we can go back. Edgy, irritable, manic, anxiety, panic, angry outbursts, pain. Stuck in the low zone, we're again talking about that depression, isolation, exhaustion, fatigue, numbness. And this is something I want to point out too, right? It can be something that's happening present time, or it can be a traumatic reminder. Have you been like, oh, I'm doing good. I got my job. I got my car. I got my boo. I'm good, right? And then you remember something. It's not even something that happened today. It might have been something that happened 10 years ago. Now you bumped out. That'll happen to me a lot of times. And see, I'm the type where, based on my personality, if I'm bumped high, that's a lot because I'm already high energy, right? And if I'm bumped low, sometimes I can stay there for too long. And that's when it starts impacting our health, right? Our mental health is connected to our physical health. Our depression and anxiety, bipolar, whatever those things are, that can start impacting us physically, right? So it's really important to understand those signs. The next one, right? So this is where we get a little nerdy, which is cool. So repeat after me. Autonomic nervous system. Nervous system, right? So we have two parts of this nervous system, okay? So, and then this is something I want to reframe too. Have you ever heard somebody say, I'm having a nervous breakdown? Don't even like take that as like a big, like, like I'm reframing, like, yeah, I have nervous breakdowns. Sometimes we have those, and I want to explain like what that really means so that we don't have stigma as it relates to that. So we have a sympathetic nervous system, and we have a parasympathetic nervous system, okay? So with the sympathetic nervous system, that prepares us for action. That part of the brain is like, we ready, right? This means something has triggered that, and our breathing rate is up, our heart rate is up, our pupils dilating, blood pressure, sweating, stress hormones, you have a hard time digesting. So like, just those are the things that our body like goes into overdrive to protect us. The problem is when we're experiencing that too often. Parasympathetic. That prepares us for rest. This is when the breathing rate is coming down, the heart rate is coming down, the pupils are coming back normal, blood pressure, sweating, all of that is coming down, and then we're able to digest a little bit better during that time. Next slide. Let's talk about some common reactions, right? When we're stuck in the high zone, we can be suspicious. We can have nightmares. We talked about this forgetfulness. Have y'all like heard about this COVID thing of like brain fog? Like where you're just not really thinking straight, or you just really don't know what's going on. That's a real thing. Poor decisions, distorted thoughts, suicidal and homicidal thoughts, rage, fear, nightmares, night terrors. That's a real thing. Avoidance, grief, guilt, shame, anxiety. And in our relationships, being angry at others, isolation, missing work, overly dependent, irritable, clingy, isolation, X, Y, and Z, right? On the spiritual side, losing your faith, or being like over religious, guilt, doubt, like all of those things. And the reason why I'm saying it in like not this type of way, but like this type of way, is because a lot of times we don't talk about this stuff, right? It's so stigmatized. It's so taboo. But it's like the more that we can develop common language, the more that we can support each other. To be like, okay, sis, I know this. I mean, not to be in nobody's business for real, because you do have to. People have to be invited into that. You have to be trusted in that space. But to be able to hold space for people, you need to understand that these are real things, like very real. Um, then this next slide, it talks more particular about some of the COVID-19 reactions because I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for how we've had to survive during this pandemic. So a lot of that could be anxiety about the unknown, anxiety about being sick or infecting someone else unknowingly, grief, job loss, plethora of things this can apply to. Is somebody up there doing this? Okay. Can we go? I'm sorry. Can we go 2 slides over? Thank you. So, here are some common reactions connected to well being during and after a crisis. So, we have strength and courage, renewed relationships, gratitude, advocate, appreciation of loved ones, forgiveness, hope and faith, wisdom, compassion for self and others, and new meanings. So, I have a thought about this, but I want to know from y'all, when do you see this, and most particularly in the black community, when do we see a lot of this happen?
You said when you see a lot of it happen once somebody got killed.
Homicide, funerals. I was thinking funerals. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Yeah, I was thinking along those lines as well. We can go 2 slides over. Okay, so here's another big thing. Let's talk about biology versus mental weakness, right? So, Crim's focus is on the biology of the human nervous system, not weakness. Not if you just experience, even if it's like secondhand trauma, like you just heard about a homicide in your community. That does not make you weak if you have like some type of traumatic or stressful symptom from that. That is a real thing and it's called secondhand trauma. Like me, I've had to take a step back from social media some days where I'm like, this is starting to impact me mentally, physically, emotionally. So those are real things and those do impact your mind, body, and spirit. Um, and CRIM helps us to learn how to read our nervous system so that we can return back to the zone of well-being called the resilience zone, right? Using these simple wellness skills. Next slide, please. This last line, I want y'all to repeat after me. And I want you to hear it so it can come back up when you really need it. We do not have to be trapped. Say it like you believe. Come on, y'all. Y'all know my daddy a preacher. I know it. We do not have to be trapped by the storms of our body. Oof. Sensations of discomfort and pain. Okay, somebody believe that. We can draw our attention to sensations of well-being and transform our experience. We're going to say it again. Oh, no. We do not have to be trapped by the storms of our body, sensations of discomfort and pain. We can draw our attention to sensations of well-being and transform our experience. We absolutely can. Thank you. That was good to me. Next slide. We're going to be, I always tell myself, I'm not going to be trapped by this today. No, ma'am. No, ham. Oh, okay, so y'all, this is my favorite nerdy word, right? Neuroplasticity. Say that. But y'all don't like it, for real. So, neuroplasticity is the lifelong capacity of the brain to change and rewire itself in response to stimulation of learning and experience. So have you ever heard somebody say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? But you can, though. You actually can, and so sometimes you can think about yourself, and you like, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can learn that. Oh, but you can. That's that neuroplasticity. So you gonna tell somebody that try to doubt you next time? Well, I don't know, maybe you haven't heard about neuroplasticity. Because I can learn new things. Say it with me, like I can learn new things. I mean, it is what it is. Okay, so and that's all of us have access to that. Now we have neurogenesis. Say neurogenesis. That is the ability to create new neurons and connections between neurons throughout a lifetime. So let me just make it plain. So you know how you have a route to work? And have you ever like got to your house and you're like, how in the world did I get to my house? You wasn't thinking, you just knew that, right? So our brain has neural pathways once we do something enough, right? So if you do something enough times, that will create neural connections. That's why they say sometimes try to eat with if you're a right-handed person, try to eat with your left hand. Or try to write with your left hand if you're left-handed, try to write with your right hand. As people, sometimes we're resistant to change because we don't think that we can, or we don't think that we can learn new things. But our body and the way God made us biologically, we all got it. Neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, it is what it is, right? And say it like Yvonne, next time, what we gonna say? I mean, it's the neuroplasticity for me. I don't know. Neuroplasticity. And listen, the scientists don't just have to say it. We have access to that as well. Okay, so next slide, please. We're going to talk about a biological invention. We can go to the next slide. ACEs has been transformative in my experience. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, right? So there's 3 realms of that. We talk about in the household. So whether you experience violence in your household, whether there was divorce in your household, drug, alcohol, sexual abuse, you name it. The second layer of that is community trauma. So was there a lack of safety and community? And then we added the third level with the pandemic stress, because neither of us thought about that or expected to experience that. So ACEs Connection accelerates the global movement to prevent and heal adverse childhood experiences and supports communities to work collaboratively to solve our most problems. Left unaddressed, toxic stress from ACEs harms children and families, organizations, systems and communities, and reduces the ability of individuals and entities to respond to stressful events with resiliency. The ACEs in these 3 realms intertwine throughout people's lives and affect the viability of organizations, symptoms, and communities. So in other words, as my therapist says, because I go to therapy every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, proudly, right? We have to address that inner child. You can't be afraid to go there, right? We have to address what are some of those things like that happen in our childhood that we need to address, whether it was in the home, whether it was in a community level, and now in pandemic, as we're raising kids, I'm even being more cognizant of like, okay, how are these things impacting my child, right? And it doesn't mean you're a bad parent, but you definitely have to be aware. Go ahead, Kim.
I'm 55 years old and I just started therapy for the first time.
Say it again, girl.
I'm 55 years old and I just started therapy for the first time. Thank you. My daughter is 35 years old and she's having her first baby. And she was my first baby, and I was a single mom when I had her. Mm-hmm. And I was a single mom in St. Joe and didn't have community because of it. And because our 2 communities are so separate, and certainly were back then, she was born in '87, I didn't have so many resources that I might have had if our communities were working together more and, you know, helping each other more. And so going to therapy, she and I made a pact that I wanted her to go to therapy because I was worried about her having postpartum depression. I was worried about real. Right, and have her growing up next to my depression. When she was little, I was suicidal as a young single mom. And I was so worried for her. And so she said, okay, Mom, I'll do it if you do it.
No, she did.
So I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. It's really brave and vulnerable to let somebody into your space like that, right? So I think that that's an amazing pact. I've been with the same therapist for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in December. I have a culturally competent woman who gets deep in my business, and we are doing some real healing. And even some things that I didn't even know I was dealing with, or even some things that's not even, me and my therapist be laughing sometimes. It's not always tears, it's not always deep and heavy. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, I need some tools. Because if they try me one more time, I'm gonna be bumped out, right? Sometimes that's how you gotta talk to your therapist, and that's how I talk to mine. So I'm a huge advocate for therapy on that end. Okay, let's go a couple more slides over. We can go back to toxic stress. So all stress is not bad. The one we're going to focus on is toxic stress. So we have 3 layers of that. That's when something happens too much, too fast. Like maybe that's just like a car accident you weren't expecting. You got side, like it was just crazy, right? That was just too fast for your body to really just acknowledge what happened at that time. So something else is too little for too long. One of my mentors and somebody I really look up to says it like this. That's like being broke for too long. You're like, okay, if I got to go another 2 weeks, and I know that's toxic stress, that's real. And too much for too long, when you just like, okay, laundry for me, for real. I'm making light of it, but it's like, if I got to fold another pair of laundry, that's too much, but, you know, in a more serious case. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Next slide. Wait, go back, because I wonder why it's skills. Okay, next. Okay, so our skills, we have 6 of them, right? So we have resourcing, grounding, tracking, gesturing, shift and stay, and help now. Next slide. And before we get into those skills, everybody, there is an app that is amazing from this organization where you can pull up some of these things real time that are more bite-sized. It's the iChill app. So you can go to your Google Play Store, you can go to your Apple Store, download iChill, and sometimes you just gotta click that and say, okay, I'm out of my resilience zone, help me. And it has really great tutorials, it has great maps, all different things like that. So let's get into our first skill. Next slide. Our first skill is tracking. And we start with this because this teaches us how to read our sensations. Next slide, please. So tracking is the foundation for helping stabilize the nervous system. So tracking is noticing or paying attention to sensations and what's happening to our body at the present moment. So if we just want to take just like 30 seconds to track, right? It's to say, okay, for me right now, I'm noticing I'm breathing pretty normal. Does anybody else notice is their heart rate fast, slow? You have any tension anywhere? I'm noticing a little tension in my back. I feel pretty grounded. But how often throughout the day do we take time to do that? This is probably the first time I done did it today, right? But it gives you a moment, like we all have access to that. Like I didn't ask you to give me $50,000, did I? No. Like it's free, and we all deserve it to take a moment to check in with ourselves and to track our nervous system. Next slide. So the doorways of expanded well-being: thinking, sensing, and feeling. Don't be afraid of feelings. People can say, oh, you sensitive? That's okay. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of sensing something. Have you ever walked in and you're like, okay, this is great or this is not so great? Lean into that. Thinking. We need to give ourselves space to think as well. Next slide. What we pay attention to grows. Somebody put it like this. If you have a garden and all you pay attention, like you can have beautiful roses, but all you pay attention to are the weeds, you're going to notice more weeds than those beautiful roses, because that's how our brain is wired as well. So it is that intentional act of noticing what is right, what is going on. Not in a fake way, but just in a way to expand our well-being. Next one. Scientific research about building resiliency. Brain cells that fire together, wire together. So the more that we think on these good things, the more that we acknowledge that and we track and we stay in our bodies, those things will make a difference. Next slide. Probably want to take a picture of this slide because this is a little more biology heavy, but we're going to get through it, right? So the insula is a part of the brain that helps the body and the mind communicate to one another. It reads physical states of the body like pain and itch, temperature, and it communicates to the medial prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is our thinking brain, to take action to keep the body in a state of internal balance. I like feeling balanced. Body awareness can reduce impulsivity and promote emotional regulation and clearer thinking. So our thinking brain is really important. The insula. Next slide. A sensation is a physical experience in the body. Sensation originates in billions of receptors distributed in every part of the body. Life experiences, including our thoughts and feelings, have a corresponding sensation within the body. Have you ever noticed, like for me, when I feel myself getting upset, my hands get hot. And so up here it kind of shows, some people experience it here, some people can experience it in their shoulder, some people can experience like all throughout your body.
You know what? This is so good this is really good because even in the what's up there? Love and pride and
Yes.
shame and envy and those surprise, like I really feel my body doing something. Like I remember saying that I forgive somebody, right? And I thought I forgave them, and it was out of sight, out of mind. I didn't see them for such a long time, and they wasn't in my presence. So I'm like, yeah, I forgive them. You know, I'm like, I'm good. But the moment they stepped in my presence, I felt my body.
Yes.
You couldn't see it, but I feel it. It was throbbing, and it was a sensation from my head to my chest.
Yes.
And I'm like, what is this? I thought I was good, and I wasn't. And I didn't realize it was playing a part with my mind. What I was feeling played a part with my nervous system. I never knew that until right now today. I was years old. When I learned about, the biology of your body, reacting like that with trauma, whatever it could be. It's a sensation. It's a sensation, like literally like a sore thumb. And when we be embarrassed, I can feel those feelings, even though you don't know it sometimes. I know it, and my body is reacting, and I feel like you're looking at me because of it, and you don't even know what's going on. This is crazy.
And you know what? I want to point out, and I'm going to get to you, Aunt Bertha. What I want to point out, too, is what we said earlier, that I don't have to be trapped by the sensations of my body. Now, does it make sense? So when that person come through that you thought you forgave, but now you feeling it in your body, you don't got to be trapped by that. Because you know how sometimes that can ruin your whole day. So now that you have that awareness, oh, that's just my body reminding me. We're good. I can track. I can breathe. I can think, and I can go on about my day.
That person is not going to have power over me like that.
Period.
I say sometimes that you think you can get through some things and you're not feeling what you're feeling. I had this lady that I had supported through some situations emotionally and physically. And then she saw me when I was on a cane, and she said, "Oh, Bertha, what's wrong?" I've been praying for you because I wanted to ask you, is your husband abusing you? What's wrong? Why is so much happening to you? Now listen, those that know me know that I don't use profanity. But it's not because I don't know what to say, because I had some good cusses in my family. But my mind started coming up with some words she just didn't know. I was standing on that cane, but my mind told me, cuss her out real quick. And I was trying, and I had some words start coming up that you would not believe. It wasn't no saintly words.
Right.
And just as I got ready to cuss this lady out, it's like the Holy Spirit just zapped me.
Yep.
And I said something that I put in my first book. Don't count how many times you see me go down. Count with me how many times you see me get up.
Shoo, you could drop the mic after
And
that.
I felt better, but that wouldn't.
What you did, you didn't allow that
I didn't allow.
sensation to trap you. You took your power back. I love that. So next slide, please. Oh, this is so good because when we learn to discern the differences between sensations of distress and sensations of well-being, we begin to have, say it with me, choice. Choice. I have choices, right, of what to pay attention to on the inside. I don't have to just pay attention to the bad. I feel like all of that is going to always coexist. There's always going to be bad. There's always going to be good. But have you ever noticed that when you thinking better, you feeling better, everything, it really does physically impact you? Because even if we look at some of our chronic diseases of blood pressure or this or that, all of that really is related to stress in one way or another. Next slide. So tracking is noticing or paying attention to what is happening inside your body at the present moment. So that's determining if the sensation is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So sitting or staying with sensations that are pleasant or neutral is what we really want to get to. Because sometimes we want to sit with the bad. We like, oh yeah, I remember she said that about me, and I'm ready to just, I'm telling on myself, right? And that eat at you. It eat at you. You playing it over and over and over again. But when I shift and I'm like, okay, I think about how much support I had at my baby shower. My baby shower was so cute. It was yellow. It was bumblebees. And I start to pull up the smell of the sunflowers. Now I'm like, I feel it in my body. That feels good. I remember that Fashion Over dress. I was super pregnant, but I was cute, right? I'm remembering that, and that is actually, even right now, I'm feeling these good sensations. I want to sit with that. So I encourage y'all. You don't even got to share. Just try to pull up something that feels, that more pleasant or more neutral, and sit with it. And so resourcing is actually my favorite skill. I didn't even know it was something that I was already doing until I learned about this. So resourcing can be something that is tangible or intangible. It can be a physical thing or it can be a memory. Let's go to the next slide. One of the best ways to learn how to develop your sensory vocabulary, because language is really important, is through identifying a personal resources, then noticing sensations on the inside. So what might be pleasant for the people in this photo? Sharing, community, fellowship, togetherness, the coffee, the cheese pizza, the environment. It's the ambiance for me. Okay, so next slide. So resourcing, this is any person, place, thing, memory, or part of yourself that makes you feel calm, pleasant, peaceful, strong, or resilient. It can be real, or it can be imagined. It can be internal, or it can be external. one of my resources, I used to have a bracelet one of my friends made for me, and it had peace on it, and it came with like a eucalyptus oil, and I used to put it on, and I just used to just throughout the day smell it. You remember my little yellow and black when it was my favorite colors. I used to just, it was one of my more physical resources. I have friends who, one of their resources is going to sit by the beach and looking at the sunset, or a memory of like something your grandma cooked when you were young, or something your dad cooked when you were young. Like all of that, it seems so simple, but it's so real, right? Because we live in this body, we live in this mind, we might as well make it beautiful, right? Next slide, please. So now let's think about some of our personal resources. And you can describe to yourself 3 qualities about this particular resource. So for me, like I said, my bracelet, it was the smell, it was the words, and it was the look of the bracelet that really always brought me back to a state of peace. Now notice the sensations connected to your resource as you describe and think about it. Next slide. Thank you. This is something that you can really do with children and teenagers in your own home. Ask them, like, what's their favorite friend? Because sometimes when you're going through something, you can feel like you're alone. So really calling up to your memory, who is actually really there for me? Your favorite pet, your favorite teacher, your favorite activity. Because some of us, either we are or we will, and it should be no shame attached to this, we might have to walk some of our kids through depression, through anxiety, through bipolar. It might happen. And so we want to be equipped and tooled. And a lot of us, like me, I grew up in the church as well. Prayer is amazing. That's always going to be our first and last resort, right? But these skills are so important as well to help our children even develop these languages and these skills and these toolboxes to move through that as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. So grounding. So the grounding is the direct contact of the body or part of the body with something that provides support in the present moment. So gravitational security is the foundation upon which we build our interpersonal relationships. If our relationship to the earth is not safe, then all other relationships do not develop optimally. When we are grounded, we have a sense of self and relationship to present time and space, and we're not worried about the past or the future. The next slide is going to show us some of those grounding positions. So sometimes, like, you can lean against something, say, okay, like, maybe you just need to take a little break, and you're like, okay, I feel my hands being supported by this, my feet feel grounded, I feel safe, I feel like I can think a little better. Or even just sitting down, like you can ground while you're sitting down, like notice how you feel supported by the chair. Think about that. And that can just help you ground in a minute. Next slide, please. So help now, right? Some of this is like, okay, like I don't even have time to ground, I don't have time to resource. Drinking some water, counting to 10, listening. For me, I like listening to white noise, rain sounds, sea sounds, different things like that. Focusing on something that you see, like focusing on a focal point, like I like that purple on there, like, though this is more like help now skills. Next slide. Okay, so we can identify sensations of distress by tracking again. And then once we identify those things, the goal is to shift to a resource or shift to grounding or shift to a help now skill. Next slide. So again, we have tracking. That's the first thing we want to do. We want to track to see what's kind of going on. Then we have resourcing, grounding, help now, gesturing, and shift and stay. Next slide. So this asks us a question, right? How am I focusing my attention during difficult times? Am I staying in the negative side of things? Am I identifying my resources? And then once we are able to identify that and stay in our body, then we can move to our resilience zone. Now our cup is full, and now I can be there to hold space for you, right? If we aren't optimally thinking for, if we can't really hold space for ourselves, there's no shame in that, right? Well, we need to identify those tools and stay grounded and remember some of those more calming gestures so that we can move toward being able to support others. And I also want to reiterate, being well for you is the biggest goal. Getting well is not always about doing something for others. Sometimes, like, doing it for you is enough. And we need to hear that as women. And I know men in here too. Like, we got to hear that sometimes. We can let's skip some of this part, and I can make sure. Okay, so there was a research study done in Sierra Leone in 2016, and this was after the Ebola crisis, right? How many of us remember that Ebola crisis, right, in 2016? So CRIM was introduced to this cohort. It was a two and a half day class, and the statistics showed that there was a significant improvement in resiliency, reduction in trauma symptoms, secondary traumatic stress, and depression and anxiety. And these improvements remained consistent when they did a 6-month follow-up. So there's a lot to back this up. We can go to the next slide. There was another study here where 1/3 of the participants were experiencing poor mental well-being, low resiliency, possible PTSD. And after that, the large effect size improved well-being, medium effect size reduced secondary trauma, stress, and physical symptoms. Next slide. And this is another study, right? Like, what does it look like after you learn the skills, and then what does it look like when you use the skills? And a big part of this is just having language. Like, it's not being able to come out and say, okay, like, I got a PhD in crim now. It's like, I have better language. Like, you're going to catch yourself, crimming yourself, and you're going to be like, I just told myself I'm tracking, I'm grounding. And you notice, like, when you talking to your kids, it'll sound like counterintuitive. You're like, I talk to Zion all the time. Okay, so are we having big emotions right now? Do we need to ground? Do we need to sit down? And it's like helping her build that resilience at a young age, right? Next slide. Feel free to take a picture of this. This is just more receipts that this model has worked across communities and across global communities at that. Even with this one was more based on trauma associated with addiction. Yeah. Next slide. Next slide. And so social, emotional, and ethical learning is really big in the K through 12 space. So if you find yourself around youth a lot, feel free to take a picture of that. This has been, SEL, when I worked in the school, was amazing to really not just focus solely on education, but bringing the whole child into the classroom. Next slide. You can connect with Tribe on Instagram, Twitter. I follow them on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. They're always doing and having great content. Get connected to the global community. They're always doing trainings, always just super, super relevant. So the last one was that their vision is to create resiliency-informed and trauma-informed individuals and communities. And they have a commitment to bring wellness skills based on cutting-edge neuroscience to our world community, one person at a time, one community at a time. So thank you. And again, we do not have to be trapped by the sensations of our body. Y'all have a good one.
Yes, ma'am. We just thank you all for coming out and being
Yes,
a part of this training. I learned some stuff today about myself and some things I can use. I'm definitely going to be using these things because, I need to be grounded. I need to track myself. You hear me? And so I'm going to be using this language, but I'm going to actually put it to use and being able to have those resources available to me too. So you are free to get some food back there. It's some salad and some meatballs and some treats, little snacks. So feel free to get as much as you want and enjoy. And Mrs. Bertha, I said, Miss King is here to make an announcement.
Okay. I just want to announce to people, some of you share with me that you've already had your vaccine shots. I just saw a young man the other day, he was high as a kite. And I told him, I said, have you had your vaccine shot? No, because I got to be careful what I put in my body. And he was high already. I said, oh, Lord, he don't get it. But I am a part of the health department and Lakeland project that's trying to get people to get vaccinated. We have another virus on the way, and we don't know when it's coming. It's called the B2 virus, B2K, whatever virus. But we need to be vaccinated because how many of us going to stay around here for a little while longer? They can talk all day long about how they don't know what's in this. We done took every kind of drug, some of us, we don't know what was in it. Drunk every kind of jungle juice we could get, didn't know what was in it. They've been working on this virus, this vaccine for over 10 years. That's what people, they've been working on this. They knew this virus was coming, but they just didn't know when it was going to get here. So they've been working on it, but they had to speed it up to get it to us. So it's not like it's totally, not necessary. But for those people who've had the first shot and didn't get the second one, or somebody who had both shots and then didn't get the booster, I have gift cards. I have the ability to give you a gift card. Or anybody that you know, just contact me, and they can go down to the health center in Benton Harbor, 100 West Main Street, and you hand them that card, they'll give you a gift certificate to Amazon, to Myers, or to, I believe it's Shell gas, but they'll give you that and then give you your vaccine shot. So just let people know that there is an incentive to getting it available. I just have to give you a referral, okay?
All right, so this concludes tonight's resilience training. Just make sure you're tracking your senses. And remember, we do not have to live in those sensations. We do not have to take on these issues and traumas in our bodies and let ourselves be having headaches and all type of stuff because it causes a lot of things. So tonight we thank you, Tracy, for this training and all that came out. So y'all have a great night. Get you something to eat. Thank you. Her books back there in the back. Please patronize her books.